no fasting magic. If you want a promise that walking before breakfast melts more body fat, this will disappoint you. If you want the honest answer, stay with me. Exercising fasted really can make you burn more fat during that session. One trial also found a bigger calorie deficit across the day, but longer head-to-head trials found no clear body composition advantage. One muscle marker even moved the wrong way. Picture two clear jars on a kitchen counter. Each jar collects a different kind of result. Most fasting advice shows you only one jar. Before we finish, you will know what belongs in both, and which one matters more after 60. Your morning may already look familiar. The room is quiet. Your shoes wait by the door. Coffee cools beside the keys, while breakfast stays untouched. You walk for an hour because an empty stomach seems like the cleanest route to stored fat. You may feel lighter afterward. You may enjoy the calm. The routine may help you get out consistently. Those are real wins. But the bathroom scale, your waist, or your strength may look much the same month after month. That does not mean you failed. It means the routine may be answering a smaller question than the one you meant to ask. A 2016 randomized crossover trial in applied physiology, nutrition, and metabolism makes the small question clear. 13 elite endurance athletes did identical cycling tests after breakfast, after a 12-hour fast, and after prior endurance exercise, followed by fasted recovery. Their peak fat burning reached 0.51 grams per minute after breakfast and 0.69 after the overnight fast. The fasted session really did burn fat faster in that moment. But that trial measured fuel use during a cycling test. It did not measure months of body fat loss in adults over 60. The effort was real. The measurement was incomplete. That difference is the spine of this whole video. The session burns a fuel. The body keeps a balance sheet. The evidence mix deserves daylight early. Every paper I will use involves people, not cells in a dish. But the populations range from elite athletes to young men and women classified as overweight. Some studies watched a single day. Some ran 6 or 12 weeks. One review pooled only 4 studies, and 3 had a high risk of bias. So there is useful evidence here, but no grand verdict written specifically for every person over 60. Honest uncertainty is part of the answer. The first myth is easy to correct. Burning more fat during exercise does not prove that you will lose more body fat over time. Those are related ideas, but they are not identical outcomes. During a walk, your body chooses among available fuels. Across days and weeks, the result also reflects what you eat later, how you recover, whether you keep training, and what happens to muscle. The upgraded promise is better than the myth. You do not need to guess. You can judge fasted exercise with 3 questions that the research can actually answer. What did the session burn? What changed over weeks? What did the habit cost? Keep those questions open. They label the 2 jars. The expected villain is breakfast. The idea says, food arrives, insulin rises, and access to stored fat closes. Skip the meal, and the fat door supposedly swings open. That picture catches one short-term effect, but it turns a fuel choice into a body change. The real problem is a mismatch between timescales. One clock runs for the workout, another runs across the whole day, a third runs across weeks of training. Think of a shop with a cash drawer and a monthly account. The drawer shows what moved this hour. The account shows whether the business gained or lost over the month. Reading the drawer is useful. Calling it the whole account is the mistake. This is a billing verification render. The purpose of this clip is to measure exactly how many premium credits a single Avatar 5 generation can run that chain through the shop. The cash drawer shows fat leaving now. The sign outside says fat burning. The monthly book stays closed. Soon the bright sign becomes the verdict, even though nobody opened the account. Almost nobody explains this, because the short result is easier to show. A watch can celebrate one workout. A headline can celebrate one fuel. The slower outcome needs weeks, comparison groups, and patience. You can do a free check before changing anything. Write 3 headings on a card: session, season, safety. Under session, write what you are about to do. Is it an easy walk, intervals, or lifting? Under season, write the result you care about across several weeks. Is it body composition, strength, or simply keeping the routine? Under safety, write whether fasting has ever made you shaky or lightheaded, and whether you use glucose-lowering medication. There is no magic score. The card is an honesty tool. If the first heading is clear, but the second and third are blank, the routine is being judged by the wrong clock. A second human trial makes the day clock more interesting. In 2019, 12 healthy, physically active young men completed 3 randomized conditions. In one, they skipped a 431-calorie breakfast before 60 minutes of cycling at half their peak power. That fasted exercise day ended 400 calories below energy balance. The breakfast and rest day ended 492 calories above, while the breakfast and exercise day ended 7 calories above. The men did not fully eat back the missed breakfast or the exercise cost later. That is meaningful. It is also one day in 12 young men. A daily deficit appeared. Long-term loss remained open. Someone like you can hear that 400-calorie result and feel vindicated. You got up early. You walked while the house slept. You delayed the meal. Finally, a study seems to show that the extra discipline counted. It did count in that experiment, but the number belongs to a 24-hour energy balance after a 60-minute cycling session. It is not a promise of 400 calories every morning. It is not a measured rate of body fat loss. It is not evidence from older adults. Your effort deserves credit without turning one trial into a guarantee. Exoneration and precision can share the same sentence. Now walk through an ordinary week. Monday feels easy. Tuesday brings the same empty stomach and the same route. Wednesday runs long, so breakfast gets pushed later. Thursday is lifting day, but the fasting rule follows you into the weight room. Friday, you feel flat and shorten the session. Each day can look successful because the fast stayed intact. But the weekly question was never whether a rule survived. It was whether the outcome improved. One short fast can be harmless for many people. Repeated fasted sessions become a different decision when they change training quality, trigger lightheadedness, or sit beside glucose-lowering medication. The habit is not guilty. The missing audit is. 3 unglamorous variables must now be present at the same time. 1 identifies the purpose of the session. 1 judges the result on the right timescale. 1 protects the cost you cannot afford to ignore. I will give you all 3 in a simple morning protocol. But first, the belief under the routine needs an audit. Otherwise, every number I give you will be pulled back toward the same old slogan. Return to the 2 jars. One already holds a higher rate of fat use. The other still has no label. The next paper tells us why. No fasting magic. The paper trail does not say fasted exercise is useless. It says the popular claim grew larger than the outcomes being measured. The 3 parts of the morning protocol have different shapes. The first is a choice between session types. The second is a review window measured in weeks. The third is a stop rule tied to symptoms and medication. Those are the shapes, not yet the answers. Before filling them in, compare the acute claim with what happened when researchers followed training long enough to measure adaptation. Start with the 2016 crossover trial again. The researchers did several things well. They standardized breakfast. They used identical exercise tests. They compared 3 clear conditions. There were 3 details the slogan tends to drop. First, the participants were 13 elite endurance athletes. Second, the outcome was peak fat oxidation, which means the highest rate of fat used as fuel during the test. Third, prior exercise raised that rate more than fasting did. After breakfast, it was 0.51 grams per minute. After a 12-hour fast, it was 0.69. After prior exercise plus fasted recovery, it was 0.89. Read those numbers again. Fed, fasted, previously trained. 3 test conditions, 3 fuel rates, no long-term body composition result. The researchers did not mislead anyone. They measured what they said they measured. The distortion happens when a precise session result travels into a much broader promise. The figure is 0.69 grams per minute. The phrase is higher fat oxidation. The image is more fuel leaving the first jar while the treadmill is running. But your version may be a gentle walk, not an incremental cycling test. You may be recently active, not an elite endurance athlete. You may care about your waist 3 months from now, not the fuel mix at minute 30. The indictment is simple. A short test became a long promise without a long result. Why does that gap matter? Because your body can use more fat during one period and still settle into a similar body composition later. Best case, fasting changes the fuel used during the session. Worst case, fasting changes the fuel used during the session. The sentence stays the same because the long outcome has not entered it yet. That is not pedantry. It is the mechanism behind the misunderstanding. The session burns a fuel. The body keeps a balance sheet. Fuel selection is one entry. Intake, recovery, and training adaptation occupy other lines. The claim was not necessarily built by lying. It was shaped by what could fit on a label. What happens when the training lasts 6 weeks? A 2013 randomized trial in obesity assigned 16 women classified as overweight or obese to fasted or fed interval training. They completed 18 sessions over 6 weeks, using 10 60-second efforts at about 90% of maximum heart rate. Body fat percentage fell in abdominal, leg, and whole body regions. Leg and gynoid fat-free mass increased. Mitochondrial capacity increased. The training worked. But there was no significant difference between fasted and fed training for any measured variable. Same training benefit, no fasting advantage. That result protects 2 truths at once. Fasted training was not a disaster. Fed training did not block progress. The repeated exercise appears to have done the heavy lifting. If you enjoy walking before breakfast and feel well, this paper does not order you to stop. It removes the claim that an empty stomach must be the secret ingredient. The shop image now sharpens. Both groups kept the doors open for 6 weeks. Both saw useful changes inside. The cash draws may have looked different during individual sessions, but the longer account did not separate the groups. The method can be a preference. It has not earned the rank of requirement. Resistance training gives us a longer test. A 2025 randomized clinical trial followed 28 participants for 12 weeks. They lifted twice each week after an overnight fast or after a carbohydrate meal, with guidance designed to keep nutrition comparable. Both groups increased quadriceps muscle thickness, strength, and power. Quadriceps thickness rose 1.21 centimeters in the fasted group and 1.18 in the fed group. The group difference was not significant. Bench press strength rose 10.53 kilograms fasted and 4.89 fed, but again the group difference was not significant. Knee extension gains were nearly the same at 28.53 and 29.31 kilograms. Training changed the body. Meal timing did not separate the outcomes. Those details matter because a single attractive number can fool the eye. The larger bench press gain in the fasted group looks dramatic until the statistical comparison says the groups were not clearly different. That is why head-to-head design matters. It asks whether the method beat the alternative, not whether people improved while using it. Your verifiable task for this act is simple. When you see a fasting claim, look for 2 words in the result: between groups. If a paper says both groups improved, keep reading. The question is whether the difference between them was clear. Improvement within a group is not victory over another group. The pooled evidence sounds stronger, so it deserves extra care. A 2025 systematic review with meta-analysis combined 4 studies of fasted and fed resistance training. It found no significant difference in fat-free mass, muscle growth, or strength. Fasted training did show a statistical edge for change in body fat mass. That is the fair concession. But only 4 studies were available, and 3 were judged to have a high risk of bias. The confidence interval around the body fat result ran from a large advantage to an edge barely past no difference. The review is encouraging, but small and fragile. Promising is not proven. There is another paper people may use as a shortcut. During 1 month of Ramadan, 19 physically active men were assigned to aerobic training in a fasted or acutely fed state. Body weight fell in both groups, by 1.9% fasted and 2.6% fed. Body fat percentage fell only in the fasted group, by 6.2%. That deserves respect. So do the conditions. This was a full-day food and fluid fast during Ramadan, not breakfast delayed after a morning walk. The fasted group also showed rising urine-specific gravity, urea, creatinine, and uric acid, while creatinine clearance fell 8.9%. Different fast. Different risk. That Ramadan study cannot be pasted onto an older adult's morning routine. The participants were physically active men. The pattern restricted fluid as well as food. The kidney-related markers moved in a direction consistent with dehydration. So this is a real safety line. Do not treat a full-day fast as a stronger version of skipping breakfast. More extreme is not more informative. The elite athlete study carries its own boundary. Anyone over 60 who becomes lightheaded before breakfast should stop and reconsider the timing. If you use glucose-lowering medication, do not fast before exercise without speaking to your own clinician first. These are decisions for a clinician who knows your medicine cabinet. Before we go further, quick check-in. Type how many of these studies you had already heard of before today. The count matters because most people have heard the conclusion without seeing the comparison. They know fasted exercise burns more fat. They have not been shown that 6-week intervals and 12-week lifting produced similar adaptations whether people trained, fed, or fasted. The missing information is not hidden. It is simply harder to compress. A fuel rate fits into a caption. A cautious comparison across different trials needs a full explanation. Almost nobody explains the second jar because it does not glow during the workout. I once treated the clean feeling of an empty morning as if it were a measurement, and I could not have told you which outcome I was actually tracking. I could tell you when I last ate. I could not tell you whether the routine protected strength, improved body composition, or merely made the rules feel tidy. My failure number was 0 written review points. No date, no comparison, no stop rule. That is an ordinary failure, not a moral one. A neat ritual can hide a blank ledger. The session burns a fuel. The body keeps a balance sheet. I was watching the fire and ignoring the book. One variable is almost absent from the popular version, the population. Check the studies yourself. The acute fat-burning trial used elite endurance athletes. The calorie balance trial used healthy, active young men. The muscle breakdown trial used healthy young men. The interval trial used women classified as overweight or obese. The Ramadan trial used physically active men. None of those descriptions means the work is worthless. It means the direct evidence in this file is not a dedicated trial in adults over 60. There is no conspiracy here. Research questions become slogans because simple claims travel farther than population details. The paper carries the boundary. The caption drops it. We now have the shape of the answer. Choose by purpose. Review by the outcome that matters. Protect against the cost. Call it the 2 clock morning. 1 clock ends when the workout ends. The other keeps running through the day and across the training block. 3 decisions sit inside it. Purpose, proof, protection. The final mistake can cancel all 3, even when your calendar shows perfect compliance. I know, because it looks like discipline. First, let us fill in the protocol. Notice what changes as the time scale widens. No fasting magic. Notice something as I go. None of this asks you to exercise more. It asks you to stop using one short measurement as the answer to a long question. The two categories are immediate effects and lasting outcomes. The three decisions are purpose, proof, and protection. Purpose identifies the session. Proof chooses the correct review window. Protection keeps a useful habit from creating an avoidable cost. That is the 2 o'clock morning. A protocol without a reason becomes another ritual. So each part gets one question, one piece of evidence, and one plain action. Part 1 is purpose. What job must this session do? This is two choices, not one universal rule. An easy morning walk may be about enjoyment and consistency. A resistance session may be about muscle, strength, and power. The breakfast decision does not need to be identical for both. For the immediate fuel question, the 2016 crossover gives a clear answer. A 12-hour fast-raised peak fat oxidation from 0.51 to 0.69 grams per minute during cycling in elite athletes. Use that result for what it is. Fasted exercise can increase fat used during the session. Session fuel, not season result. Purpose also prevents a substitution error. Walking and lifting are both exercise, but the measured outcomes differ. The 6-week interval trial looked at body composition and muscle oxidative capacity. The 12-week resistance trial looked at muscle thickness, strength, and power. If your purpose is a pleasant walk and fasting feels comfortable, the evidence here does not prove you must eat first. If your purpose is resistance training and protecting muscle matters most, the later cost marker deserves more weight. The first jar now gets its label, session fuel. It tells you what burned during the effort. It does not tell you what the whole training block built or preserved. Purpose chooses the question. Part 2 is proof. How long must the second clock run? This one has two checkpoints because the evidence itself uses two useful windows. The interval trial ran 6 weeks. The resistance trial ran 12 weeks. So 6 weeks is the earliest honest review point offered by these training studies, while 12 weeks gives a longer view. That does not guarantee a visible change by either date. It means a 2-day impression is too short to judge the outcomes those trials measured. Choose the outcome before the block begins. Body composition, muscle thickness, strength, and power are not interchangeable. A scale reading cannot stand in for all four. Time gives the result room to exist. Your tracking tool is the card from earlier. On day 1, write the session purpose and the outcome you care about. At 6 weeks, review that same outcome. If you continue, review again at 12. Do not turn a home note into a laboratory test. Most people cannot measure muscle thickness or fat oxidation in the kitchen, but you can keep the question stable. If your goal was strength, do not declare victory because the scale dipped after a sweaty walk. If your goal was consistency, do not declare failure because one breakfast moved earlier. The tool does not manufacture proof. It stops the question from changing after the fact. Proof keeps the books honest. The 2019 one-day trial fits here too. A 400-calorie deficit across 24 hours is a result on the day clock. It is stronger than a fuel rate alone because later eating was included. But it still stops after 1 day. The 6-week interval trial asked a longer question and found no fasted versus fed difference for any measured variable. The 12-week resistance trial also found no clear group difference in muscle, strength, or power. 1 day can reveal a possibility. Several weeks test whether that possibility survives repeated living. This is where the two jars stop competing. They store answers to different questions. Short evidence can be true without being complete. The first measurable change has no universal deadline in this evidence. That answer may feel unsatisfying, but it is cleaner than inventing one. The earliest training study here measured after 6 weeks. Another measured after 12. Neither showed a clear body composition advantage for the fasted condition over the fed condition. So do not expect a special fasted result by next Tuesday. Use 6 weeks as a first review, not a promise. Use 12 weeks as a longer review, not a guarantee. If nothing separates the methods, choose the one you can perform comfortably and safely. A timeline is a checkpoint, not a prophecy. Part 3 is protection. What cost would change the decision? This part has an upper limit. No theoretical fat-burning benefit outranks a symptom that makes the session unsafe. Lightheadedness is not proof that fasting works. It is a signal to stop the session and reassess. Glucose-lowering medication makes the decision more specific. The evidence file warns adults over 60 not to fast before exercise on those medicines without speaking to their clinician. The Ramadan study adds another boundary. Full-day food and fluid fasting produce dehydration-related marker changes. That pattern is not a stronger breakfast skip. Protection sets the ceiling. Now comes the objection that keeps many careful people locked into the rule. You may think, I have walked before breakfast for years and I feel fine. Why change a habit that is working? You may not need to change it. If the session is comfortable, medication does not make fasting risky, and the habit helps you walk consistently. Keep the preference without giving it a false job. The decisive change is in the claim. Stop calling the empty stomach the cause of long-term fat loss when the head-to-head training evidence does not establish that advantage. Keep the walk if it serves you. Release the mythology. There is one harder case. What if you lift before breakfast because strength is the priority? This is where the final jar begins to matter. The 12-week resistance trial is reassuring. Fasted and fed groups both gained muscle thickness, strength, and power. Meal timing did not clearly separate those long-term adaptations. But another experiment measured a cost signal after a single resistance session. It did not track 12 weeks of muscle growth. It looked at muscle protein breakdown after breakfast or no breakfast. One marker, two conditions, a result that points the other way. That is the late reveal. A 2021 crossover trial in nutrition studied 13 healthy young men. On one visit, they ate a 497-calorie breakfast 2.5 hours before resistance exercise. On another, they skipped breakfast. When breakfast was skipped, insulin was lower before exercise, free fatty acids were higher, and a urinary marker called the 3-methylhistidine to creatinine ratio was higher at 6 and 8 hours after lifting. That marker is used as a sign of muscle protein breakdown. The authors concluded that breakfast before resistance exercise can help suppress that breakdown signal. More fat was available. More breakdown appeared. This does not prove that one fasted workout strips muscle from your body. It was an acute trial in 13 young men. The marker is not the same as a long-term measurement of muscle size, but it changes the risk conversation after 60, because muscle protection is not a side issue in this episode. It is the cost named in the angle, and it moved in the wrong direction, while the popular story celebrates fat use. If even young men can show a higher breakdown marker after fasted lifting, an older viewer should not treat that possibility as irrelevant. The title question has an honest answer. Before breakfast exercise burns more fat now, but it has not clearly produced more body change later. That is the hope in the evidence, not a reason for fear. You do not have to squeeze every possible gram of fat from a single workout. You can choose the breakfast timing that supports the work you need to do and the safety you need to keep. The hardest case does not say the ship has sailed. The 12-week trial shows both fasted and fed lifting groups improved muscle, strength, and power. Training still worked. Your case remains open because the useful part was the training, not the empty stomach. 2 life images follow from that. You can carry the groceries with confidence. You can rise from a chair with strength you practiced, not strength a fasting slogan promised. The 3 decisions now fit on one card. Purpose. Identify whether the morning session is an easy walk, hard cycling, or resistance work. Proof. Choose the outcome first, then review it at 6 weeks, and, if you continue, again at 12. Protection. Stop for lightheadedness. Avoid fasted exercise on glucose-lowering medication without clinician guidance. And do not copy full-day fluid restriction from the Ramadan trial. That is the whole 2 o'clock morning. One session question, one training block question, one safety boundary. Boring is the proof. Nothing here depends on a secret window. Now for the cancelling mistake. It is not forgetting one of the three decisions. It is using perfect adherence as the outcome. Watch how this happens. At 6:30, you leave without breakfast. At 7:30, the watch closes its exercise ring. At 8 o'clock, the app logs a completed fast. At 6 weeks, the calendar shows 42 clean checkmarks. But you never chose a body composition measure, strength measure, or safety review. The habit scored perfectly because the score was the habit. The corrected three-part string is simple: session, season, safety. Compliance is not proof. The workaround is not to fast harder. It is not to add a longer delay before eating. It is not to copy the full-day conditions of a Ramadan study. Open the monthly book. The watch reports the session. The 6 or 12-week review reports the season. Your symptoms and medication check report safety. One instrument shows fuel use. Another asks what changed. A third tells you when the experiment should stop. These were never three unrelated problems. They were one timescale problem. A short result was asked to carry a long decision. The two jars finally have names: immediate fuel and lasting outcome. There is one compounding variable you must keep visible: the type of training. The fasted walking question cannot automatically answer the fasted lifting question. The acute cycling trial showed more fat use. The interval training trial showed similar longer outcomes whether fed or fasted. The resistance trial showed similar 12-week adaptations. The breakfast crossover showed a higher muscle breakdown marker when lifting was done without breakfast. Different sessions expose different costs. Therefore, the same fasting rule should not be pasted across all of them. The achievable minimum is 1 card before tomorrow's session. The stretch is a stable 6-week review. Protection follows from purpose because the session decides which cost deserves attention. So where does the evidence leave fasted walking before breakfast after 60? It can be a comfortable preference. It can raise fat use during the session. In one small study of young men, skipping breakfast before cycling created a larger deficit across that day. But head-to-head training trials did not show a reliable body composition advantage. A small resistance training meta-analysis found a body fat edge, but it pooled 4 studies and 3 had high risk of bias. Fasted lifting also raised a muscle breakdown marker in one acute crossover. The honest verdict is conditional. Preference is allowed. Magic is not. Let us close the loop on everything you just heard. The first jar measures immediate fuel. The second measures lasting outcomes. Fasted exercise can move the first without clearly beating fed exercise on the second. Use purpose, proof, and protection. Match breakfast timing to the session. Review the outcome across the same 6 or 12-week window. Put symptoms, medicine, and muscle cost ahead of a fasting streak. You did not fail if the scale ignored your disciplined mornings. You may have been measuring the cash draw while asking about the monthly account. The effort was real. The instrument was wrong. I want you informed, not self-treating in the dark. Anything you plan to try deserves a quick okay from your doctor. If you use glucose-lowering medication, that conversation belongs before any fasted workout. If you become lightheaded, stop and reassess. Full-day fasting without fluid is not the same experiment as delaying breakfast. You will find the full source list under the video, 1 link per study. Open the description whenever you want to read those studies yourself. Keep the 2 o'clock morning card where you can see it. Then comment 1 word that names the result you will protect: strength, safety, or consistency. That word turns the lesson into a decision. Save me a seat for the next one, where we dig into what to eat before a morning walk or lifting session. That follow-up will separate a light snack from a full meal, look at timing without turning it into another rigid window, and keep medication and appetite in the picture. For today, remember the mirror pair. The workout tells you what burned now. The training block tells you what changed later. One clock guides the session. The other protects the season.